After a 5-year investigation, President Biden's son Hunter has cut a deal with the Justice Department.
He has pled guilty to 2 misdemeanor counts of failing to pay federal taxes in 2017 and 2018 and has agreed to probation. The deal will allow him to possibly avoid prosecution and jail time on a separate gun charge. Federal prosecutors say that the younger Biden lied about using drugs on a gun permit application, violating federal law. The agreement still has to be approved by a federal judge, and Hunter Biden will be arraigned in federal court in Delaware in the coming days. The president and the first lady have responded, saying only that they, quote, love their son and they support him. Joining us now to break it all down is our political analyst, Paul Lisdick.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Paul. And my initial question is, a cynic might say, these are just orchestrated to placate some of the critics out there, and there's much more serious stuff going on that he has not been held accountable for.
Well, first of all, the DOJ doesn't work that way. They don't sit there and sort of play the politics, not in the DOJ. But having said that, there's something interesting here, which is the only reason Hunter Biden would have agreed to a deal of any kind on these charges would be if the DOJ says, okay, we're wrapping up, this is it, which means, wait a minute, anything else you were talking about with money and China and all that kind of stuff, they're not going to do anything. But there is a line in the report today that says, the investigation continues. Now, whether that means continues until it's entered into court, because that will happen maybe next week or so, or whether it means they're still looking at laptops and other kinds of stuff, we actually don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense because he wouldn't agree to anything if that was going to continue.
Right. So why plead now if there's an ongoing investigation? I mean, the investigation's been going on for years.
Well, that's right. And look, it's not only him. Remember, it's Joe Biden's brother is part of the money thing. So maybe they're still looking at him, too. I mean, the point is, everybody on television speculates about what all this means. I try and speak to things just as a lawyer and what's legal here, which I think we can do. But everything else, it's political, right? I mean, you're going to hear from Republicans tonight. It's a hand slap, and nobody else would have gotten off this easily. But the bottom line is, these days, what's called the diversion, pretrial diversion, which is what lets Hunter do some things to get out of the gun charge. Those are the kind of things that are much more common today for all people. So if this were something that happened with Joe Smith, might Joe Smith get this same deal? And given what Hunter's pleading guilty to, the odds are probably yes.
You're talking the average person, Joe Smith says.
That's what I mean, right? Yeah, there's no Joe Smith.
Any chance that the judge could dismiss this and say this is not acceptable?
Well, there's a chance the judge has to approve it, but the odds of a judge denying acceptance of a plea agreement that the DOJ has granted into is small, and it's worth noting the prosecutor here is a Trump appointee. So when Biden came into office, he could have fired this guy and put an end to the investigation. He had the power to do it. He didn't. He let it continue, and this is what the Trump U.S. attorney has determined.
Okay, so how about Hunter Biden says, all right, I'm going to agree to these things because now I avoid the felony charge. I've got some misdemeanor tax charges. You probably have to pay that money back. And then says, hey, Dad, how about a pardon so that I don't have a criminal record, even though he said I'm guilty? Possible?
It is possible. But certainly President Biden can pardon him. But will he? I think Biden has shown himself, again, people like or don't like the president, but there's nothing the president has done that illustrates he's trying to exert control over the DOJ and various investigations. He won't talk about Trump. He won't talk about any of this stuff. So can he pardon his son? Absolutely. Will he? I don't expect him to.
I mean, the misdemeanors again, right?
Yeah, but right.
But you have a criminal record. Maybe that doesn't.
He will have a criminal record. I mean, that will be.
From a legal standpoint, what do you make of his attorney saying that this is all about, a time in his life when he was struggling with addiction? And yes, we do know that to be true. But given the types of charges, it seems to me that there's some thought behind trying to save money, trying to keep your money as opposed to paying it out for taxes.
Well, so here's the thing. I mean, part of the reason he's getting this deal is he paid the tax bill and he paid back taxes. Had he taken a defiant position, which is, I don't know the money and I'm going to fight whether or not he wouldn't be in this deal. The gun charges, he didn't shoot anybody.
Right.
With the gun charge, he put some false information on his permit application. But I think part of what DOJ may consider the direction that the Supreme Court has been going lately in terms of respecting gun rights and expanding gun rights, this would have been a tough one for them to win. And the bottom line is the drug piece that you talked about, Dina, steps in when it comes to filling that out when it was a bad time in his life. So if he's cleaned up, if he's paid the money, I mean, those are absolutely legitimate things that the Department of Justice takes into account to determine what the sentence will be. No
How
question.
often do people win fights against the IRS is a question for another time.
Okay.
You can get more
Thank
from
goodness.
Paul every Sunday morning with the Political Report. Paul Lisdick, we thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.